Good morning, Tony Datino. I'm doing my Wednesday live with Tony early once I get to my afternoon, I am off and going. We have our last session of the Brain Fitness series up at the Pictona Pickleball Club in the Daytona, Florida area. So I'm off and doing that mid-afternoon. And before my day gets away from me, I wanted to cover a couple of topics that I've read over the last few days that I thought were extremely important, and I wanted to make sure I got that out to my Live with Tony audience. The more I let these things go, the more the pile builds up. So I'm trying to keep on top of this because the materials that continue to come out about our brain and physical health are just endless. So here, for example, I'm not going to cover this one today. In the current issue of the School of Medicine from Mount Sinai, talks about damaged cells may be a target for Alzheimer's tests and treatments. So now you go back and you start looking at, well, about damaged cells. But the one I wanted to cover, because I think we can control this and it does a lot of benefits for us, is an article on strength training could give you more healthy years. And when we talk about strength training, I want to wrap that up into the overall category of exercise. Because what I'm finding more and more, and this article actually goes on to suggest, previous research has an association between muscle strengthening activity and a lower risk of dying. However, it has not been clear what the optimal dose of this activity might be, but the federal government does not specify how much strength training workouts should be. Researchers looked at 16 studies with follow-up periods of 25 years, and they discovered from 4,000 to 480,000 people aged 18 to 97 considered aerobic or other activities of physical as well as muscle strengthening activities. The data analysis showed that engaging in muscle strengthening activities for 30 to 60 minutes a week, that's not a lot, was associated with a 10 to 17% lower risk of death from any cause, including heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancer. There's not conclusive evidence that more than an hour a week of muscle strengthening activity reduced the risk any further. The findings were independent of aerobic exercise, but an analysis of muscle strengthening and aerobic activity showed that the reduction in risk of death from any cause, respectively, said that when these two activities are combined, you have a 40 to 50% lower risk. Now, what's that all about? So let's look at this topic of exercise. So I go to the LA Fitness gym. I see people working out in various gyms, running. I see people running on the street. I see people swimming. Now, swimming may be a little different, but let's think about this. Aerobic exercise is good for the oxygen that comes into the brain. So it's important we have oxygen because 20% of our oxygen is used by our brain. So having some form of movement rather than just sitting stationary and just sitting on the couch all night, which we call the couch potatoes affectionately, is not the best way of building strength and or clearly doesn't build any aerobic. So getting up and walking about, of any kind of movement, gardening is certainly one, doing some household chores, cleaning the house, moving about, generates some level of oxygen flow. So we've known for years that bringing aerobic activities to our bodies of any sort, and it doesn't need to be marathon races, is positive for our brain, positive for our overall health. But recently, they've been coming back more and more with the equal importance of doing some form of strengthening exercises. And again, this doesn't mean you have to be Jack LaLanne, but we certainly saw what the benefits were to he in terms of his life expectancy. But some form of keeping your pecs, your stomach, your glutes, your thighs, and a bit of your arms communicated to the brain. So this was interesting research that they did, that by working out on these muscle groups, it communicated to the brain that this body was still alive, that there was still things growing within the muscle groups, that they actually had transmitters that were telling the brain, hey, this body's still going, so keep it alive, keep the brain working. And this is, I mean, you look at this stuff today, it's almost like, reminds me of Flash Gordon in my childhood days, and saying, and now look at what we're doing when we go to the Space Center and look at rockets going off to the moon, and now we're talking Mars. This is the kind of stuff that I love to share with people because it makes a difference if they just practice some of these minor things. And I say to people, you don't need to get out to the gym. Just wherever you're sitting in a chair, just start to learn to get up, right, for your thighs. Just get up from the chair without holding on to something, and do that 3 times and see how that feels and how it builds on your strength. If you have steps in your house, make a point of trying to go up and down a few steps and see if you can do it without holding on to the rail. Be safe in doing this. I'm not telling you to be crazy. Just be safe and make sure you can do it, because it brings the third element, which I'll talk about in a minute, of exercise. But the importance is that you're doing something to work these muscle groups. I take water bottles, right? I have water bottles, or now I've gotten the dumbbells. When I couldn't get the dumbbells in the store, I went and used water bottles. It doesn't matter how heavy they are. It needs to be some weight of resistance. Stretch bands are another way of working the arms and the pecs. What do you do with the stomach? Well, my goodness, the old age sit-ups. You know, you just lay in bed, or preferably on a solid surface. Just do some sit-ups. 3, I mean, just a few, to let your muscle groups know, hey, this thing is still going. And then, of course, we know with our backside, we just stand up and squeeze, just squeeze, and just let those muscles know, hey, I'm still working. Which then brings us to balance. So a third exercise we should be doing, and I'm seeing this more and more now, with lifting a foot up off the floor just for 10 seconds. So can you just stand on one foot, lifting one foot up off the floor for 10 seconds, and then you want to really take a go at this, close your eyes and see if you can do that for 10 seconds, then lift the other foot up for 10 seconds. Now, if you really get good at that, take your right foot up and bend your knee with the heel of your foot going behind you. And do that for 10 seconds. And then do your left foot and bend it behind you. And there's your balancing exercises, which are huge and important. And I know lots of people do flexibility, which is the 4th element of exercising, and that is flexibility. And our flexibility is important to us because it keeps, as we're learning, the fascia lubricating all of our different muscle groups, and it keeps us from those aches and pains. And our movement then helps build that flow of what the fascia is doing for us to keep those joints flexible and moving. So yoga is one, but you don't even need to do yoga. I mean, any kind of movement where you're just moving those body muscles out into different directions helps. Now, what are all the benefits of this? Okay, so keep in mind that this is an association and not a cause and effect. The studies included the review based on participation to accurately report the amount and type of exercise. The data with the research suggested that up to 2 hours per week lowered the risk of premature death. What might underpin the associations seen in these studies? Well, muscle strengthening activities have been shown to balance blood sugar levels. Now we're going to get to the biology of this. So muscle strengthening balances blood sugar levels and lowers the risk of type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, while boosting muscle and bone mass, both of which are associated with lower mortality risk. What this goes on in terms of the science of doing all of this suggests that this also, as I've just said to you, enhances your cognitive function. It keeps your body moving. It keeps you going through different mental challenges in terms of the dendritic spines. And so the benefits are endless in terms of what we can do. Watching television. So I do my stretches at night. I do my flexibility exercise watching TV. So rather than sit there for 2 hours watching some of my favorite programs, I get up and I got a program, it takes me half an hour, and I do that every night. And it doesn't bother me, because the other alternatives, I sit there for a half hour and I get up and I'm like achy anyway, so why not get up for 30 minutes out of 2 hours and do a little bit of flexibility? That's my Live with Tony broadcast for today. I am off and running about my day. I hope all of you have a wonderful day, and I will be back here on Friday. So have a good week. We're halfway through it, and we'll see you then.